Today I want to start off with a quote from the book The Ecology of Fire by Robert Whelan. It reads, "The important point is that we can be certain that a community will change in different ways depending upon the characteristics of the fire itself, the past fire regime, and post-fire climatic and biotic interactions." Now what that sentence means is that there is no one way that an ecosystem responds to a fire. And today I want to illustrate this with some case studies. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to lay out some scenarios, then tweak the knobs just a little bit and we'll see what happens, yeah? So let's consider an ecosystem with 50% resprouters and 50% obligate seeders. Now remember, resprouters can survive a fire, obligate seeders die in a fire and must regrow from seed. And this ecosystem burns with a medium intensity fire every 100 years or so. Let's tweak with the fire intensity first, shall we? So instead of a normal intensity fire, the next fire is of high intensity. So much so that not only the obligate seeders, but also the resprouters get killed. The plant composition will then completely depend on recovery from seed. So in this case, the obligate seeders have the upper hand. If the intensity is low, resprouters can survive the fire, while obligate seeders get killed. In a new situation, resprouters will have a head start in growth, and because they're already so big, they can hinder direct competition from seedlings by blocking their sunlight. Okay, now let's see what happens when we change the fire frequency. So if the frequency increases, obligate seeders may not have enough time to produce a large enough seed bank to sustain the population. We've seen this phenomenon before in the alpine ash video. So higher fire frequencies usually favor resprouters. The other way around, a low fire frequency allows obligate seeders to build up a large seed bank. Plus, the longer time in between fires means more fuel is produced, so higher intensity fire. This ensures that both seeders and resprouters get killed in the fire. So, the seeders' strength in numbers will make it very likely that they will dominate over the resprouters. Follow me? Let's now put animals into the equation. So how animal populations change after a fire is a lot less studied, but what we do know is that it varies a lot. Some will increase, some will decrease. An example of the last one is the sugarbird, which relies on certain tall trees for their food. Now after a fire, it may take 8 years for these trees to reach that height again. So within that time window, the sugarbird won't be able to find food here, so their population decreases. But there are some ant species which suddenly increase in numbers after fire. And these ants eat seed, which is bad news for the obligate seeders that get their whole seed bank eaten up. But at the same time, this creates empty patches in the vegetation, which means less fuel continuity and therefore less spread of the fire. And a similar effect can actually be achieved by grazing. So are you seeing the connections that we're making? So fire affects plants, which affects animals, which in turn affects plants and then the fire again. Right? These interactions. This is what fire ecology is all about. There's just one more aspect I'll shortly cover, which is just as important as everything I've mentioned before, and that is climate. And my favorite example of this is rainfall. So what happens to a plant when it rains? Well, first off, they get wet. Simple as that. But because they are more wet, they are less likely to burn. So rainfall can decrease fire risk and intensity. On the other hand, since the vegetation didn't burn, it can just keep on growing. And what's the other thing that happens when you add water to a plant? They start growing. So rainfall also means increased fuel, which causes the opposite effect, namely higher fire risk and higher fire intensity. So let's bring it all back to that question that I first started out with. A community will change in different ways depending on the characteristics of the fire itself, the post-fire regime, and the post-fire climatic and biotic interactions. Well, we've covered all those things. But what I mainly hope to make clear with this lesson is that there is just not one way that an ecosystem will respond to a fire. There are just too many elements that influence the outcome. And the examples that I just covered are just the tip of the iceberg. But here's the nice thing. You now know how one fire is different from another, how plants and animals respond to them, and some interactions between them. And with that, you've got a pretty good base to work out the rest of the connections yourself. In the days leading up to December, I've had quite an eventful week, which I'm gonna summarize here.
Melbourne is the city of events, and it is also the cultural capital of Australia. So because of that, there are cultural events all the time here in Melbourne. And right now, there's an African culture festival going on at Federation Square. So let's go!
Small correction, it was the African Music and Culture Festival. So there was a main stage at Fed Square where African music was celebrated, there were drumming workshops and stands with African food. It was great, but of course Melbourne gonna Melbourne, and it rained on our parade.
So as you've noticed, it started pouring as usual. So Karma already left. I went to a stand, I got these samosas, which I'm gonna eat right now, and I hope it's gonna stay dry tomorrow for the night noodle market.
The next day I went to the post-exam celebrations for international students, held at the night noodle market at Birrarung Mar. Most students would have had exams. Since I'm doing research, I don't have any. However, I am an international student, so I'm still eligible. We had some food at the market, it rained quite a lot, and then we went to a restaurant in the CBD where I finally got my noodles anyway. On this day, I went to Warrnambool, about 250 kilometers west of Melbourne, on the invitation of Nature Glenelg Trust. This committee aims to protect and restore the native grasslands in the local reserves. To do so, they invited star botanists from all over Victoria to do plant surveys. And they also invited students, because I'm not an expert botanist and especially not an Australian flora. Anyway, I learned so much about native flora from the botanists. I saw how a new species was described, heard the funny sounds of the pobblebonk frog, and we even recorded an endangered plant in the surveys. Every last Friday of the month there is a barbecue at Burnie campus. However, because of fieldwork in September and the conference in October, I missed out on 2 opportunities. But this time, I didn't let it slip by me.
What's up above us? So tonight the Socceroos are playing Tunisia at the World Cup in Qatar. So I'm headed to this pub, the European Beer Bar, to meet some mates and watch the game together and hopefully see the Socceroos win.
And you bet we watched the Socceroos win.
So within 48 hours of the match between Australia and Tunisia, I'm back at where the pub is again. Why? Because on the opposite side of Exhibition Street, we can find Vic Roads. And that's where I'm gonna get my driver's license converted today.
If you go to Australia with an overseas driver's license, you are allowed to drive based on that license for 6 months. However, if you stay longer than that and want to drive after the 6th month, you need to have it converted to a Victorian driver's license. Now, since I might need it for my field work and since I definitely plan to travel in my 7th month, this was inevitable.
A couple hours ago, Holland beat the United States. So I'm at Federation Square right now, it's 6 a.m. There is a huge crowd, and I'm gonna see who the next opponent is for the Netherlands. And you know who I'm gonna root for today. During the whole entire match, the crowd kept throwing flares at the screen, which caused tiny fires on the sheltered roof of the stage. And believe it or not, they had firemen on location to put out these fires. Just incredibly stupid that it has to go this way. But yeah, it was hysterical. But not as hysterical as the 77th minute when Australia scored. After that moment, the atmosphere was crazy. The final moments of the game were so thrilling. Australia actually looked like they were standing a chance. I was cheering so hard for a quarterfinal between Australia and the Netherlands. So unfortunately Australia lost, but the Socceroos fought really hard. They have all my respect. I guess the next opponent for the Netherlands will be Argentina. Don't worry guys, we'll get them for you.
I started off this day really early because the Netherlands were playing Argentina in the World Cup. I reached out to a Dutch Facebook group and met up at the restaurant Panenka in Abbotsford at 6 a.m. I ordered some brekkies, watched the trail for a while, and captured that moment. At extra time, the store opened, so the owner got us these seats instead. So much better. Not as great, watching us get eliminated by Argentina after penalties. Well, it is what it is. But I wasn't gonna let it hang over me just a bit, because I had bigger plans that day.
Good day up above us. So that was a bit of a bike ride, huh? Well, we finally made it. Welcome to St. Kilda. So out of all the places we visited until now, St. Kilda is the first one that's coastal. So this is St. Kilda Beach, Melbourne's most famous beach. Okay, so this is St. Kilda Pier, which is now in reconstruction for the most part. But if you come here at the right time of the year, believe it or not, you actually have a chance to see penguins. So you've probably realized by now that Melbourne is a very green city, and St. Kilda of course couldn't be an exception. So this is St. Kilda Botanical Gardens, one of the many green spaces here in St. Kilda. Right now, they're setting up the stage for the evening, right over there, at the Palace for Shore. For sure? For sure. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, 6:30 p.m, live in Melbourne.
A King Gizzard concert is an experience of a lifetime, really. Let's give you a good impression of what it's like.
So remember the Palace Theatre? So that's right over there, and right next to it, they built this huge main stage. Now, I'm used to having concerts at night back in the Netherlands, so this is something somewhat completely new to me. Although I do have to say, when I went to a festival, this was quite the same setting. I guess this is what you get when you have a concert right in the middle of summer, which is in December.
The supporting acts were the hard-hitting punk band Civic and Stella Donnelly, whose lovely music I'd describe somewhere between the realms of indie pop and indie folk.
So the supporting acts are still playing, but I can actually see them standing already. Still waiting. TikTok. Oh blimey, here they come!
These boys are amazing musicians, so you can fully lock your attention to the band and completely immerse yourself in the music. But if you like to go the extra lane, their gritty punk style songs will get the crowd so riled up you can go moshing or crowd surfing even. I went a couple times, and the crazy part, it's not at all distracting from the concert, right? This is just the way you can enjoy the music. I've learned that now. Anyway, next to the hardcore repertoire, they also play some mellow music, and the crowd, well, they respond appropriately. And the next song, it can just go back to insanity like that. That's what a King Giz concert is all about. Truly an experience of a lifetime.
I've spent some time the past weeks training muscle ups. Got stronger as a result, but haven't achieved an unassisted ring muscle up yet. But that's also not my focus. My focus is on training planche, so I've returned to planche training again, but with a new mindset. You know, putting deadlines on things like achieving planche, it's just not a good idea. You'll just frustrate yourself every time it won't go your way. Honestly, I just realized it doesn't matter how long it'll take. In the end, when you eventually achieve it, you're still gonna have to keep training to maintain it. So, I've accepted, I don't need to achieve the straddle planche before I leave Australia. As long as I made progress since coming here, that's all I'm after. To do so, I added these 90-degree holds into my routine. They're basically bent arm planches, and they'll surely strengthen the muscles needed to hold the planche. The moment I'll achieve it, it'll come, no matter how long it seems to feel. You gotta keep consistent and trust the process.
Thanks for watching again. Your Australian word for the day is ripper. This is basically the Aussie version of the word awesome. So you use this slang to indicate when something is great. And you can also use the words bonza or beaut, which have pretty much the same meaning. So when you ask your mate how the concert was and he replies that it was bloody ripper, mate, then you know it was a really great concert. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about wildfires and about Australia. Don't forget to follow me on my socials to see cool photos of my adventure, and visit julzdownunder.com to read frequent blog posts. And if you like the music that I used in this video, visit my SoundCloud at Julz Down Under. That's it. See ya!